Well, as we sit here 6 months into the legislative session in June of 2011, legislatures left town for a while. They may be back over the summer or into the fall. One of the key issues for producers in IABNY is the issue of the mandated health insurance exchange. Because of the federal law, the federal health law, every state is required to set up a health exchange. And one of our key issues going into this legislative session has been to allow producers to be involved with business that's written through the exchange. There are some groups out there that do not want producers involved. We began this effort back in September of 2010, after the federal law was enacted, working with policymakers both in the governor's office, the insurance department, leaders in both houses, the respective chairs of the insurance and health committees, and negotiations have gone on right through June, and there's an agreed-on bill that has a lot in it for producers, and we're very proud of the fact we were able to actually draft some of the language in the bill. And Jill, do you want to talk about some of those details?
Yeah, as Michael mentioned, this is a pretty good bill. It includes a lot of the things that we had talked to the legislature about throughout the month, and one of those important provisions is a role for insurance producers to sell policies within the health insurance exchange. The legislation that passed the Assembly this year includes a requirement that the exchange board of directors do a study on the procedures that would be developed that would enable insurance producers to sell those policies through the exchange. Another key principle that we had looked for, and which is included in this legislation, is a seat on the board of directors would be available to an insurance producer. The bill requires a 9-member board of directors, and each of those directors has to possess certain qualities related to health or insurance. One of those is experience in selling health insurance policies, and certainly an insurance producer would fit that bill. So we will certainly be looking to make sure that producers play a role as a director of the health insurance exchange. There's also other areas in the bill as well where they could play a role. There are 5 regional advisory committees that would be established under the legislation. Each of those advisory committees would have 5 members, and again, this time there's a specific mention that a licensed insurance producer would have one of those seats on the advisory committee. So we're very pleased that producers have been mentioned throughout this legislation. We think it's a positive step, and we'll certainly be working, once this legislation gets passed, we'll be working to make sure that the procedures that are developed to allow participation of agents includes fair provisions, including fair compensation. But at this stage, it passed the Assembly, and I think maybe Peter can tell us what happened to the legislation not quite through this year.
Yes, the bill was agreed upon right at the end of the legislative session. The Assembly passed the bill. There was a rather contentious debate in the Assembly that focused really on whether this bill was an endorsement of the federal Obama healthcare reform effort. That debate spilled over into the Senate discussion, and when the Senate Republicans conferenced the bill, there were quite a number of Republicans that voiced their concerns about it. So much so that the leader decided not to bring the bill to the floor. There are plans to come back in a few weeks to take up the legislation. I know that the Republicans in the Senate majority are, discussing, the number of votes they need to get this bill passed. The senators have even indicated that this bill may not be something that needs to be taken up in the next couple of weeks. So it remains to be seen whether the bill will be done in a couple of weeks or possibly at the end of the year.
So we're going to be, as both Peter and Jill have mentioned, we're going to be keeping this as one of our key priorities. We are pleased that a 10-month effort that we've undertaken has resulted in this piece of legislation, and we're going to be working with the policymakers to enact a bill that's workable for producers whenever they finally enact the bill.